So while we're on this topic, I wanted to take the time to answer a question that a bro of mine asked me the other day. My bro is premillennial dispensational, and I am postmillennial. He asked, or he said, I just don't understand how you can see Christ ruling over all nations right now with all the wickedness and evil still abounding. This is an excellent question, bro, and I'm glad that he asked it so that I may be able to answer it. And I figure, why not answer this on my page so that all of you guys could hear what I have to say about this or see how I would answer this. I'll give you guys two reasons why I believe that Jesus is and has been conquering and ruling and reigning for the last 2,000 years and will continue to do so until the full number has come in. Number one, the scripture itself testifies to this. We have internal evidence that this is what the scripture teaches. We have Psalm 110, 1 and 2. Yahweh says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies as a footstool for your feet. Yahweh will stretch forth your strong scepter from Zion, saying, have dominion. Have dominion in the midst of your enemies. Psalm 110 has been and is continuing to be fulfilled. How do I know this? Well, because Paul confirms this. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 24, Paul says, then comes the end, when he hands over the kingdom to the God and Father, when he has abolished all rule and all authority and power. He must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. Paul says he will hand over the kingdom to his Father after he has put all of his enemies under his feet as a footstool. Until he does that, he must reign. This is what Paul says. This is what we're reading right here. This is why Psalm 110 and 2 says that he is having dominion in the midst of his enemies. Jesus, the Son of God, is ruling in the midst of his enemies right now. Back to 1 Corinthians 15, verse 26. The last enemy to be abolished is death. Now, this is contradictory to what premillennial dispensationalists believe, because they typically believe that on the cross, Jesus conquered and defeated death. He did not. But this is what he did do on the cross. Revelation 5. He has redeemed us or purchased us. He has bought us unto God with his own blood. People from every tribe and tongue, every people and nation, making them a kingdom of priests, or a kingdom, priest of God, priest of our God and Father, to reign over all the earth. That's what was accomplished on the cross. Jesus purchasing a people unto himself. Paul says the last enemy to be defeated or to be abolished is death. And guess what? That is completely consistent with Revelation chapter 20. Satan, death, and Hades are the last to be thrown into the lake of fire. Verse 27, for he has put all things in subjection under his feet. But when he says all things are put in subjection, it is evident that he is accepted, who put all things in subjection to him. That is God the Father. Jesus is the one who is the exception. God the Father is the one putting all the things in subjection under the Son's feet. And when all things are subjected to him, then the Son himself will also be subjected to the one who subjected all things to him, so that God may be all in all. So there's a process going on here. And what we're seeing, what we've been seeing for the last 2,000 years, is that process being worked out by God. Here's another internal reason, a parable that Jesus tells, or that Jesus gives in Matthew 13, verse 31. He presented another parable to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field. And this is the smallest of all seeds, but when it is fully grown, it is the largest of the garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches. So first of all, Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like this mustard seed. So the smallest of the seeds is planted. When it's fully grown, it becomes the largest of the garden plants. So it's going to start small and then it's going to grow very large. Now, as a result of it growing so large, the birds of the air come and nest in its branches. Let's not forget that in the parable of the sowers, the birds that come and snatch away the seed, what do the birds represent? The enemy. Likewise, we see here, these birds represent the enemies coming in and making their nest in the branches of this mustard tree. Now we see all throughout church history how this has played out. We see it in our own lifetimes. We see it in the church today. And as we see, our Lord gave a parable preparing us for this, explaining to us what this is like, what the kingdom of heaven is like. Now, this parable is completely consistent with Daniel chapter 2. Let's go there. Nebuchadnezzar has that dream about the statue. The feet of that statue gets destroyed. Daniel 2, verse 34. You continue looking until a stone was cut without hands, and it struck the image on his feet of iron and clay and crushed them. The iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed, all at the same time, and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them was found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. I'll repeat that. The stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Let's peep Daniel's interpretation of this. Verse 44, and in the days of those kings, most specifically the fourth king or fourth kingdom, the God of heaven will cause a kingdom to rise up which will never be destroyed. And that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will itself stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made it known to the king what will happen in the future. So the dream is certain, the interpretation is trustworthy. So, number one, according to the scripture itself, internal evidence, Jesus Christ is ruling and reigning right now with his saints in the hearts of men, and he is drawing all men to himself throughout every generation. This is why it's so important for us to continue preaching the gospel with our families and to our families, and then winning the nations. While the LGBTQ plus whatever community is busy trying to destroy it and trying to stop the continuation of generations, which they won't be able to do. They may be trying. Psalm 2, why do the heathen rage? Why do the nations rage? You feel me? Anyways, point number two, or I should say reason number two. Church history itself, man, bears witness to the fact, the testimony of Christ ruling and reigning since his ascension, furthering the gospel. The gospel has thoroughly been preached throughout all nations. You know what I'm saying? I have been studying church history for many years. I've read the fourth edition of this book many times, and now I've been reading this one, this edition 5 for I'm on the third time now of reading this book. I highly recommend that book, and I highly recommend these books by Nick Needham. 5 editions, you guys. These go way more in depth than church history in plain language. Church history in plain language is like an overview of all of church history up until now. The digital age, guys, the digital age. I highly recommend that book. So far, I've read volume 1, which goes from the 1st century to the 6th century. Now I'm almost done with volume 2, which goes to the Dark Ages. But there's a reason why Nick Needham titled his series 2000 Years of Christ's Power. Jesus Christ has dominion right now. He has dominion in the midst of his enemies. He is in the process of making his enemies a footstool for his feet. And Paul agrees with me on this. And I agree with Paul on this. This is a highly symbolic book. This is a vision that John is having and is writing down. But anyways, these are my 2 reasons why I do believe that and will maintain that Jesus Christ is ruling and reigning right now, even though there's so much evil still in the world. God will judge this evil. Trust me, he will.